Good afternoon to all of you, and congratulations to all the MBA graduates today. I wish I could honestly say that I was invited here because I was going to impart words of wisdom to all of you, but I suspect that the real truth of it was that not so long ago, I made a passing remark to some INSEAD faculty member that since it's the 25th anniversary of Banyan Tree and it's getting to the end of the year, we've had a whole host of celebrations. Maybe I should end up with the celebrations by inviting all of you to give you all a 50% discount on any Banyan Tree hotel you want to go to anywhere in the 25 countries we are in. Now, I mean, obviously, as you would know, that's just smart marketing on my part because you all are going to be, you are in the elite, you're going to be the elite of all elites. I think the school has probably told you many times before that as MBA graduates, you probably will have starting salaries higher than everybody else in the world and so on. So we need to capture you. We need Banyan Tree alumni also. We've also, some of you may be, I think around the late 20s, early 30s, all have got partners. So we also give any kid who's conceived in a Banyan Tree hotel, the kid gets lifetime stay, not the parents. Now, after having said all that to butter you up, I'm going to have to say a few things that are a bit more contrarian. Now, as someone who never obtained an MBA degree from anywhere, and who thankfully, in retrospect, I never even knew the term due diligence before I made what was 25 years ago my biggest mistake at the time, but which is now my most strategic asset, which is 300 hectares of beachfront land in Phuket in Thailand. Because of all this lack of due diligence and what it has done for me, you may forgive me for being a little bit skeptical about the value of an MBA. Of course, this is sour grapes. This is sour grapes coming from someone who never had an MBA from INSEAD. And at most, my university, SMU, we do have an MBA degree, and one day we will reach your status. Now, your MBA degree is obviously an important milestone in both your professional and your personal lives. However, unlike the sheer youthful exuberance of an undergraduate degree representing liberation from parental support and the start of adulthood, although listening to the cheers, some of you actually look like you're behaving like undergraduates graduating from your first degree. An MBA represents perhaps a more nuanced and a more sober inflection point. Some of you, probably all of you, hope you've arrived at least, if not at the door, you've arrived at the staircase of the steps that's going to lead you to the C-suite floor. Others may have been unhappy with the past careers you've had 5 years before you entered here, and you see the MBA as a way to change your career directions. For many, the MBA journey is entangled with recent marriage and new family pressures. And we heard, I think, some expressions of some little baby just now, so probably the kid of one of the graduates here. But for all of you, I think there's probably the somber realization that getting ahead in this highly competitive world is not going to be as easy as you thought when maybe 8 years ago, when you obtained your first degree and you were on the way to truly conquer the world. Even an MBA degree from INSEAD is not what it used to represent for my generation of career builders many years ago. The proliferation of nearly identical, painfully politically correct MBA curriculum and degree around the world begins to threaten to now commoditize the product. The groupthink and the groupspeak of MBA holders has bred a global elite class of highly competent corporate managers to feed the needs of consultancies and MNCs, but which might lack the original and unorthodox approaches necessary for creative entrepreneurs. The MBA may well remain an important credentializing prerequisite for the C-suite, but it is in danger of being considered irrelevant by unicorn creators or social entrepreneurs who are increasingly replacing corporate leaders as societal change makers. Furthermore, many of the best and brightest overachievers in high schools and universities have shunned the so-called fastest route to million-dollar bonuses via the MBA or investment banking due to investment banking's self-inflicted implosion and reputational decline over the last decade, and many have turned to exciting new forms of social entrepreneurship. In addition, the fourth industrial revolution plus increasing longevity, resulting in several career changes and skill set obsolescences during the lifespan of every young person entering the workforce today, has also persuaded many people about the advantage of lifelong learning via several periodic skills-specific executive education sabbaticals, rather than the current early career MBA. For these and perhaps other reasons, the annual total intake of MBA students in the world's single largest MBA market, the United States of America, has steadily declined in recent years. The good news, however, is that the share of women in US MBA cohorts has steadily increased, and their participation is clearly improving the quality of each MBA intake. Incidentally, it looks like you sort of, this graduating class fits the normal profile. Can I have a show of hands from all the women who are graduating today? Well, I think you still remain a minority, but it looks like it's not as bad as it used to be. And clearly, to all the women here today, you're going to lead the world, not your male counterparts. Kidding aside, I think perhaps the key to the transformation of the MBA into a potent, groundbreaking, and creative instrument for societal change will start with a gender and inclusivity movement within the MBA world itself. Within my own company, within everything I have done, I have found that diversity and inclusivity can only improve any organization. And I hope that will be true for the MBA world itself. Now, I certainly hope that the INSEAD MBA is not just a probably relatively expensive, would you not say? Relatively expensive, but hopefully a speedy ticket to the C-suite. But I hope it's also a journey into thought leadership and business-led societal change. Now, my own association with INSEAD and my admiration for INSEAD goes back a long way before any of you were even born. Nearly 40 years ago, when I was a disillusioned young journalist working in Hong Kong, your then also young, but now octogenarian, Professor Henri-Claude Bertignier, who was a founder of the Euro-Asia Center, invited me for a 2-year research fellowship at the Euro-Asia Center in Fontainebleau, which he had just founded not long before. Now, thankfully for me, since the Euro-Asia Center wasn't as famous as it is today, and they couldn't afford to be choosy, they offered it to me. Who knows? Career changes, and all of you are going to look at career changes. If I had gone, perhaps I might have gotten an MBA from there, or even perhaps a doctorate. I could perhaps be one of your esteemed faculty members. But life was not to be. My father suffered a stroke, and as the eldest son, I had to enter the family business. And a decade later, I started my own business, Banyan Hotels and Resorts, for which we now celebrate our 25th anniversary. Over the years, I've watched INSEAD grow from strength to strength, first from afar, and then nearer when I joined its Asia-Pacific Advisory Board. And about a decade ago, I invited your founding dean of the INSEAD Singapore campus, Professor Arnold de Meyer, to join Singapore Management University as our 5th president. It was one of my best decisions as the founding chairman of SMU, and Arnold has been a great credit both to INSEAD and SMU. And obviously, my relatively cynical remarks about the MBA has 2 exceptions, INSEAD and SMU, naturally. I think as future business leaders, you clearly need to also be societal change makers. So let me just touch on a little bit of what I see in the macro part of the world. And it is a mixed picture. First of all, though, and as I think Eugene has said, despite the fake and not so fake news about the state of the world today being so terrible, it is actually a better place than ever in human history. Despite the tensions of the US-China Cold War, the acceleration of global inequalities and its violent backlashes, or the distressing decline of all the institutions of democratic liberalism, we are living in the longest period of peace and prosperity that the world has ever known. Per capita violent deaths due to wars, terrorism, or even crime have never been lower since recorded history. Global life expectancy and per capita incomes continue to rise. Never have more people been lifted out of absolute poverty as in the past 2 decades. Never has medical science eradicated so many ancient scourges, found cures for so many diseases, and prolonged life and its quality so rapidly. So I could cite you a lot more data, but the point is simple. As you enter the world and everybody else of my age group tells you how the world is in such a terrible state today, it's important to remember that humankind does continually progress, even if haphazardly, with 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards. In the US, it's probably 3 steps backwards and no step forwards. And while we should all be concerned about current geopolitical and socioeconomic trends, it is not naivete which compels me throughout my entire life of ups and downs to always see a glass of water as half full rather than half empty. Otherwise, you will not find it in you to continue to work and to continue to strive and to remain idealistic as you get older and you encounter a lot of problems. Secondly, I think we have to remember that all of you today actually have front row seats to a drama of historic proportions. It is a civilizational realignment that has not occurred for the past 300 years. Back in the 18th century, the world was actually in a dynamically balanced state where different civilizations coexisted, not without tensions, not without wars, but with no single civilization dominant to the exclusion of others. East Asian, Islamic, South Asian, and European civilizations all competed but also coexisted under the sun, jostling but unable to dominate completely the other. Then, in a period lasting some 300 years, Western civilization became ascendant. In an unprecedented confluence of intellectual flowering through the acceptance of the scientific method of critical inquiry, political stability through the rule of law and democratic institutions, economic strength via the Industrial Revolution in Europe, and geographic expansion through military technology and imperialism, Western Europe and then the Anglo-American civilization, in particular after World War II, became the sole dominant civilization over all others. It reached its peak perhaps some 30 years ago with the collapse of Soviet communism and the freeing up of Bulgaria, resulting in what some naive historians have written books about called the end of history, as if it is possible that with the demise of Soviet communism, Western liberal democracy has reached its end state and the world had reached some kind of utopia. Of course, it did not work out that way. And today, a global Pax Americana is declining as China returns to its civilizational status. And as other countries around the world, other ancient civilizations like India also begins to assert itself after centuries of continuous decline. And so we have to see this as a drama of truly historic proportions. And from what I can see around the room, probably the ethnic, religious diversity in the room today was something that the founders of INSEAD never predicted. In my own business today, I talk about something called rainbow tourism, because when I started in this industry 25 years ago, it was one single color. It was white people traveling to underdeveloped countries to enjoy the world. Today, in tourism, and all of you see this as if it's an accepted fact, but it is not. It is completely new to see people who are of all colors, yellow, black, brown, and even pink, really traveling around the world and enjoying what the world has to offer. Thirdly, I think you will have to also navigate the uncertainties from technological disruption in the form of robotics, AI, and so on that was spoken about. I certainly hope that the INSEAD MBA, while certainly not capable of predicting the specific impact of technological disruption, I hope it's taught you how to anticipate its coming, how to mitigate its disruptive impact, and how to swim with and perhaps even stand up and ride the wave of change rather than to be overwhelmed by it. That truly is a change that none of us can predict, and even in my time when change occurred, the only thing you could do would be to ride that wave of change and not to be overcome by it. Fourthly, and perhaps most worrying, despite the relentless march of progress in creating a better world for all its human inhabitants, the cost to other life forms on this planet and to the physical environment has been almost incalculable. Climate change will soon become, if not permanently irreversible, certainly unpreventable for at least the next century, and its toll on the planet will be enormous. Now, I'm not a doomsday alarmist about climate change. I don't believe that even with its quickening pace, the world will come to an end and the human species will entirely disappear. But the process of adaptation will be increasingly painful for each successive generation. My generation has already failed dismally to make the difficult decisions which yours now has to come to terms with. Whether we can reverse or mitigate the pace of climate change is no longer my generation's burden. I'm a granddad. It is your generation's clarion call to action. Fifth, despite the bad rap which unbridled capitalism and particularly CEO self-serving excesses has given to the reputation of global business, it would be a tragic and unforgivable cop-out if the business community and its leaders, such as yourselves, simply burrow deeper into your own narrow money-making endeavors, keep your heads down, stick to your careers, and do not dare to be thought leaders, even if by being thought leaders you get called out by other politicians. Younger business leaders must restore the trust of society that is indeed the mission of business, and that mission is to create a better world for all. All of us in business, we have the collective resolve, the vision, and the power to not only curtail climate change, but to make capitalism a means not just to enrich the already rich, but to make a better world for everyone else. And finally, I just want to leave with you the idea that your ultimate responsibility, despite all the previous exhortations to save the world and to make a better world for everyone, I'm beginning to sound like a Michael Jackson song. The ultimate responsibility of yourselves is actually to yourselves, to create a life of purpose and meaning, whatever that purpose and meaning may be for each of you. Challenge your own self-limiting presumptions. Ask why something is to be, why it cannot be otherwise, why it should not be the way you want it to be. And dare to change the world in whatever small way you can. The saddest thing I see in young people today is a life wasted, as I see some young people who has the world in front of them, and they essentially sleepwalk through life. They adopt a career, they get a job, they get married, then the whole humdrumness of life begins to take over, and they sleepwalk through it without knowing truly how short a life is. But in your desire to change the world, I only would recommend a saying that I've always kept as a guiding principle, and many of you have heard it before. And the advice is that you have the courage to change what can and must be changed, that you have the humility and the grace to accept what you cannot change in life. And most of all, to have the wisdom to know the difference between the two. Because clearly it is that difference between the two that will give you purpose and meaning in life. So can I wish you all great meaning, great purpose in life, a great time in Banyan, making lots of babies, and congratulations to all of you again. Thank you very much.